Good afternoon and welcome to the April 5th meeting of the Watershed Committee. We have several members of the committee with us, several staff members, as well as a member on Zoom this afternoon. First order of business, any comments, questions on the minutes from March 1st?
No, I would move to approve the minutes from March 1st.
I second.
Second from Ed. All in favor, say aye.
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 And as always, thank you for such a great job. Appreciate it very much.
Linda writes them up. I realize how much I talk at these meetings. And go, did I say all that?
Oh, I'm going, wait, 7 pages?
Yeah.
First committee item to discuss, just provide an update. Bob, if you want to give us the status update and pull that microphone right up tight, close there.
On Black Forest, we've got the clearing out to Hermance, and now we're heading east back towards Wilbert's Christmas Tree Farm on that one.
Okay.
And then on the Commission Ditch, cleaning out all the fallen ash trees in there. We are done up to Harris Road, and we've moved over to the park, and we're going to go from Harris Road to 441 sometime this week.
Okay. Are we mowing in there or just picking out stuff that's fallen? Or
Picking all the stuff out that's fallen and then cleaning up everything that's in there. We're knuckling everything out of there so it's all smooth again, so.
Okay. And then from there, I believe we've committed to going over to Fiddler's Hollow. So the lower end of, we did the Piper's Meadow piece last year, and I've said, I'm not sure the timing, but I said that's a summer project for us, and there was a couple of neighbors have reached out over there. They're having some drainage issues. I just don't think the water is draining out of the neighborhood. I think it's just kind of holding all over, but it kind of just is kind of extra spongy and wet. So I still need to coordinate with the Nature Conservancy on that one. Talk to the school district. They are good if we need to come through their property, but may make more sense coming off the end of Coachman and Brome. I think it's a shorter hop over to get over to that piece, but we'll coordinate with the Nature Conservancy on that and see what they...
Yeah, because the Black Forest, we'll probably coordinate end of June timeframe. We should be buckling up that one.
Okay.
Somewhere in our end of June, beginning of July.
Okay.
Bob, you talked about the ash trees. Is that pretty prevalent? I had 2 that are done. Is it just pretty much destroyed the...
Drive down Atlantic Avenue and just look into the woods.
Yeah, they're all
snapped off. And
I saw that, especially down by Commission Ditch.
Yep.
That whole stretch.
Yep.
They're all ash.
Yep.
So
Yeah, that stretch from Atlantic Avenue to Sweets Corners, there was probably 50 to 60 trees that were down in there.
So I did see some that were falling and looked like the inside was just all hollowed out.
Yep.
Is that what happens?
Yeah.
And then it just gets weak and whatever minor wind or just...
Yeah, it's killing the roots, and there's a couple of them you see around there. The tree's tipped over, and about a 6-inch stub of root is on it, and that's it.
Yeah, okay.
So,
Okay. And then we've slowly been getting in some of our other permits, so I think that'll take us probably between Black Forest, you guys are on now, Fiddler's Hollow will take us through to probably our September meeting, and then we can update the group on that, but in the meantime, we can look at what might fall next, and obviously all this is weather sensitive, time sensitive on that, but we've got a couple others that are starting to come in, so we can coordinate on the other ones that are coming in. Okay. Any questions from the committee on what's currently going on?
Yeah, just what's the status with the permits that are in the hopper right now? Have you heard anything on those, Mark or Mike?
Yeah, we've been, let's say, slowly starting to get those in. I think DEC, as we've shared before with this group, is getting a little more, say, stringent.
Mm-hmm.
They've, in the past, they were more comfortable saying, okay, it starts from here and goes to here. Here's the length of the permit, and kind of, left up to us to what needs to be done. This next round of permits we're getting in, they're kind of more focused as you can clean sediment from here to here you can do tree removal and
yeah.
other stuff, wetland areas, I think is going to be the real challenge on those. I think some of those areas kind of in the Finger Lakes piece, kind of back of Watson-Hulbert Road, up back in through there, there's some wetland areas that they basically said if you can do it by hand, great. If you can't, then kind of it is what it is. We'll have to kind of see how those go. So we may kind of work up to those on either end, where before in the past, we tread lightly and kind of track through. Again, we're not looking to drain the wetlands, but there are areas that, larger trees, and we had walked that, and there's some 4 and 5 foot diameter trees that they said, okay, you can cut them up and then roll them a little bit at a time, but obviously that's quite a feat, depending on how thin a slice you make of a 4 foot diameter tree. That's quite heavy and cumbersome, so we'll kind of have to see how that goes, but, so that's been a little bit different, but at least, so we're trying to scale our project accordingly. We're, within the new constraints, and so to say with those adjustments, those permits are starting to come in. So that's all we had for the updates. So fortunately, Bob and Eric have made available some gentlemen from the DPW. They've been out doing some stream walks with us. So I think Mike's going to, pull those up of different areas that they've been walking, taking a look at. So Rich Gross and Rick, and I don't know Rick's name, my apologies, have
Valletta.
Have been kind enough to go out and do some of the stream walk areas for us. So we've kind of highlighted some areas that either we haven't cleaned in a number of years, we've heard, comments, concerns from residents, and then we've got an overall map that hangs on our wall that we kind of track the years either we've done cleaning or we've done improvements on the stream. Just trying to be a little bit more regular about it. So Mike prepares these maps, kind of showing areas of town, and Mike can kind of highlight the different areas and say, okay, we just haven't looked at this stream in a long time in this area. They have some gap time, between plowing. We're not quite ready for spring projects yet, so, those are good times that they're willing and able to go out and walk these streams. The leaves aren't on yet, so it's easier to look at. So they've gone out, walk some of these areas, come back, no, it looks good, we're great, no concerns. Or other times, there's some big trees down, this area looks silted in. We've had a couple of spots they went to that they couldn't find where the stream was, and, it's either grown up with trees or, silted in. So, thanks to them, they've looked at these and, kind of walked through these different areas. And again, this is kind of a shout out to the community at large, as we do every year. If you've got an area of concern, stream, think we haven't looked at in a while, we can go and walk it. Also be aware if you see gentlemen out, they wear neon yellow vests and are walking around, they're looking at streams and, trying to evaluate what's going on. And again, we can't drain wetlands, we can't, do other things, but we at least can make sure that the mainline channel is open and flowing, and that's where the drainage funds go to. So Mike's bringing up some of these different maps. If you want to run through them, Mike, of the different areas.
Sure. Most of it is streams or tributaries that we haven't walked in either a very long time or have never walked. So both Rich and Rick, have walked these. I give them a general map that has a general length of what we're looking at, and they usually go out when they have a chance, and then they've provided the maps back with markups that kind of show where some blockages are. Either trees are down or silt build up and kind of help give us pinpoint, problem areas or potential problem areas that, we should maybe look for to providing or applying for a permit for. So, I do have a significant list of, what they've walked this year. So, it has a 4 Mile Creek tributary, Hipbrook tributary. So, they have needs, the north 1/3 needs help based on some of the stuff. But again, we might go out ourselves, look at these, and see what needs to, if anything, happen, and then apply for the permits. So.
So you just kind of want to share with this group of, the different areas we're looking at, as well as I said, the public at large. So if you think there's an area that there's an issue in and near your property, we do try to get out and regularly take a look at it. And then we do have a map that we try to track when we've last, done any work on it, done any improvements, as Bob shared, with ash trees, with other stuff, sometimes just a tree kind of snaps off, comes down, lands in the stream, creates a blockage. If it's, that straightforward, and it's accessible from the road, that's something we can go and pick out of the stream. If there's other times you need to, dig around it or dredge, anytime we've got to do any soil disturbance, that requires a permit from the DEC and the Army Corps. So that's when it typically takes us a year, 2 years, depending upon where it is, what it is, in order to get that permit. So just to share with everybody kind of what those timeframes are. If it's a, simple blockage in the stream, that's done a little easier. Obviously, got to work with DPW's schedule. But if it's a matter of having to, dig anything, we've got to get a consultant involved. They go out and do an evaluation of it. They assess any of the wetlands in the area, what contributes, to that drainage way, and then look at, what may be needed, and then along, working in conjunction with them, then we send those permit applications off to the DEC, the Army Corps. And I think I shared, must have been late last year, maybe our November meeting, we did a walk with DEC. They were, willing to come out and walk it with us. Some of the permits we have in for this year, we applied for last year. They want to come out and walk them, so we found a time after the leaves are off, you can get out and kind of walk the streams, walk the spots. Here's what we're talking about, here's the issue, here's the concern, so they can get eyes on, the situation, which kind of helps and them to understand what we're looking to do. We're not looking to, dig the Panama Canal, but we're just trying to get things open so that, drainage is maintained, and, we don't, especially with, with trees and suckers and stuff like that, over time, if you don't maintain them, they grow up right out of the stream, and then now the water is diverted one way or the other, and nature finds a way, but sometimes it's outside the stream area and causes some impacts with that. So.
And with these maps of this past year, I think most of the town has been at least evaluated since 2016. So it's probably a good cycle that we're in now where, we start going back to ones that we did in the past. So, but hopefully trying to maintain these, it makes it easier for the next go around rather than starting fresh.
So again, put it out to the public as well. If you've got areas of concern, please email the engineering department. We do have a web spot on the website. You can also submit comments, concerns, if there's an area that we haven't looked at, or we may already have a permit in process. We have walked it this year, but unfortunately the lag time between looking for a permit, needing, some improvements, and that's why we've tried to be a little more proactive on this committee in the past. We'd be reactive. There was an area, there was an issue, understanding that it's an issue today if you've got drainage problems, and unfortunately, it often takes us a year or more to get the necessary permits. So we've tried to be a little bit more proactive on some of that. Any other comments, discussion on the stream walks? Nope. So looking ahead, this committee traditionally for our June meeting, and I think it's June 11th, if I'm correct, we go out and take a look at some spots in the community. So I kind of started to generate a little bit of a list, but obviously this committee decides where we go. We borrow one of the rec vans, meet in the morning, go out, drive around, get eyes on some different spots, take a look. I know we've committed, Mr. LaMagna was here the last couple of meetings, so Timberline Drive, we've got that on there. I think while we're at Timberline Drive, Glenbrook Pond is just around the corner. We just recently did a culvert replacement. So I think it'd be good to look at, where the culvert replacement was, as well as some of the treatments. And by June, the treatment wouldn't likely have taken place yet when they treat the lilies, lily pads and some of the vegetation in there. So we can maybe have a good look at what that kind of pre-pond treated area is. as well as we've been using the muckaway pucks in the ponds. So that was one of the ponds we had to dredge several years ago. It was mid-2010s, 2015, 13, somewhere in there. So we've been trying to use the muckaway puck. It's a natural bacteria either through pucks or pellets you can put in the pond, and then it puts the bacteria, and that helps eat the organics at the bottom of the pond. So as the stuff settles out, you got the organics, so we don't have to incur the cost or the impact of trying to dredge a pond every year, every so many years. I think those have at least held it steady, so I think we can take a look at those and see, how those are working. I also thought of looking at one of the stream cleaning projects, so depending on where we are come June, whether we're wrapping up at the, call it Black Forest, but over near Hermann's, if we want to go look at that and see what, the group or the crew is doing in those areas. And then I know, Ed, I think you suggested at the last meeting or talked about Allen's Creek, and that's a
Yep.
project that we're still looking to meet with those neighbors. We're finally coming to a conclusion on the permit for that. So just due to timing, it'll likely be a next summer project, but we need to engage those neighbors, start doing some stream walks with them. But, we could go down and look at the area that we had a major hill slide a couple years ago, see how that's hopefully been stabilizing itself and revegetating and how that's kind of come back. So that was,
Mark,
yes, sir.
do you think that'll encourage the neighbors if they see us down there walking on that Saturday? Show that we're showing interest in it?
Yeah. So I'll contact the property owner down there. We've come through their property a couple of times, and they've been more than amicable to let us come in and take a look at that, park, and then kind of walk, in through their yard, and they can take a look at that. But I think it's helpful to show the committee has interest in that area, and committee's been following that project along with Allen's Creek and the erosion and the issues we've been having down through there, and we'll have to work with those neighbors and get releases and get access points with them. So that'll be something we'll be working through the summer on, with those neighbors, and then looking to get that into bid, going out to bid late winter, spring, and then have a summer construction next year. So that was the list that I had compiled. I don't know if anybody else has interest in any certain locations, spots. Typically, we're out for about 2 hours, so we can't do too many, but we've done other treatment spots in the past and stopped, and, don't have to have a final answer tonight, but if you had thoughts and comments, I'd at least the spots we need to contact the neighbors ahead of time, get permissions if they're home or not home. Just so we stop by, it's not a surprise, but I'll just let them know, the committee's looking to come those days, and if anybody has any other spots, thoughts, questions, areas to go, we'll get those in ahead of time, and then we'll tour around and take a look. Okay. I don't see anybody in our audience for public participation, and I don't see any callers. So not seeing any, we'll move on to communications. So coming up in April, Catherine Dubreck, our junior planner and our GIS specialist, was able to secure a grant through the New York State Urban Forestry Council for $1,000 to get new plants, new trees, and so we're targeting to plant those in Rothfuss Park. So we've got that outer stone dust path route, look to stagger those and plant those in there, as well as in partnership. That's the same weekend that the county Soil and Water does their giveaway for tree saplings. So we've, along with the Conservation Board, have purchased some tree saplings. So I believe we have white spruce, eastern white pine, and we have red maple saplings on that day that we'll look to, give away to people. We'll have some tables there. I believe the Monroe County Strong Museum is coming. They have a little display, and I'm sure people in the stormwater world have seen it before, where it shows the watershed. If you've got pollutants, how those wash down. So they've got a nice little model that you can do with that. I believe there's going to be I don't know if Color Penfield Green is going to have a table. I think they've got another.
Color Penfield Green, yeah, yeah, they're
I
definitely,
think
they're all in on
looking
that.
at a table, and I know there's another group about neighborhood, sustainable neighborhood or sustainable yards, I think is coming, as well as Bruce Zaretsky, who is the town's landscape consultant. He's going to come and speak and talk about, tree plantings and vegetation and whatnot. So
I believe there's also some Boy Scout and Girl Scout groups that'll be joining as well.
and as part of that, they'll be helping with tree plantings. If people want to come out and, plant a tree, we'll partner with the Parks Department on that. We'll have the saplings, whether you want to, take them home with you, whether you want to plant them in the park. So hopefully it's a kind of a good event. I know April 9th, I believe coming up this weekend, we've got the electric car show at the community center. So anybody that's interested in electric cars, and I believe that Bob Knauer is also going to be bringing some electric cars to this event as well. So if you're interested, you can take a look at those. And then I believe shortly following that in early May is Good Neighbor Day. And so that's in reference to the Rothfuss family, Terry Rothfuss, so in remembrance of him, the neighbors also looking to go out and help clean up yards, help out some seniors, do some things around the community. So I think we've got a couple of good events coming up with that.
Hey, Mark, the Plantathon, I have it on my calendar. Do you need representatives from this committee, or does the town have their own booth, or what's the?
We're going to have, obviously, it's going to be out in the park, so hopefully, we'll have a tent if there's inclement weather, but it's not at a facility. But, we'll have town staff there. We'll have, some people from the Parks Department. So just open that up to the Watershed Committee, the Conservation Board, and,
Okay.
if there's hopefully families and public there, we can
We can
share
talk.
what does the Watershed Committee do, what's the Conservation Board Committee do, what are these different, advocacy groups, learn a little bit about planting a tree, take a tree home with you. So hopefully it's a good day, nice weather. We can hope for that, and families that come out and be supportive of the.
Great, thank you.
Mark, do you know what's being done sort of on a proactive way to communicate this out to residents of the town?
I know that our new communication specialist they're looking to put it on our website. They've put it on Facebook. I know we've got some signs going up around town, so the sign, it's not on it's on the screen internally. We've got some physical signs to put in front of Rothfuss Park. It's going at some of the intersections. I think it's at Shadow Pines, so hopefully between Facebook, between social media, as well as on the town website, talk about it at events like this. I know they'll talk about it at the Conservation Board meeting tonight as well. So hopefully between whatever different media outlet you reach out to. I know, I believe the supervisor has put it in her column and shared it with her column. And I think we also have a newsletter that's coming out as well to inform residents.
Mark,
Yes, sir.
have you thought about putting a next door neighborhood?
Yeah, we could do that too.
Yeah, because there's a lot of
It is.
groups like that, and you can specify, by
Okay.
neighborhood. And there's there's a similar platform to that too, that reaches a slightly different group. I'll get the name for you.
Okay, yeah, whatever opportunities we have. I say we've got, the grant is for, specifically planting the trees, so we've got that slated for Rothfuss, but we do have tree giveaways, and I say they're saplings. People expect to come and pick up full-size trees, and they're bare root, small trees that you're going to pick up, and try not to overemphasize what they are and the size and the scales. When people show up and go, well, that's it. But, we will be planting trees through the grant at the park. So hopefully, years down the road, you want to walk the path, you walk around the park, you can get some shade on the path at the park. We're also recently awarded a contract to Pooler Enterprises. They're looking to add 3 new athletic fields over there. So if you are in the park in the area, and they're bringing materials in now, starting to stockpile those, they're going to start stripping topsoil in the back and then creating these new athletic fields that hopefully they'll have done this summer, seed them. They'll have to sit for a season, and then hopefully next summer, probably late summer, fall, they'll maybe ready for play or new use on those. One of the other things under the Town of Penfield part that I wanted to share and brief with this committee is the issue we've been having with some of our private ponds. So every 3 years, we need to go out and do inspection of all of the town-owned ponds. So we've got, I think, 56 fully town-owned ponds around the community. We go out, look at those, inspect them, make sure they're functional, make sure they're working properly, there's not gopher holes, trees growing out of them, so as part of the maintenance. We then have another, say, 100 that are fully private. So Wegmans ponds, Home Depot's ponds, we send them letters out. They've got to send an inspection note, engineered review of their pond back to us, as well as what their course of action is. Then we have some ponds that are private but serve a bigger purpose. And some of those are the ones that, I say, we struggle with. One, getting the reports back from the private owners. Two, what is their real responsibility? So one, Mike's pulled up, it's just on 5 Mile Line, the Mayor's Garden, or excuse me, Mayor's Farm neighborhood, just north of Bauman's property, just north of, that's the school that's there. I'm forgetting the name of it's Montessori school, thank you.
Montessori.
So just north of that, so there's a private property, and I don't mean to pick on this individual here. We have several around town. It's just easy to show. So lot number 1 has ownership of the pond. So it is on private property, but it serves the drainage of the entire neighborhood. So at the time the development went in, all the lots were sold. This person bought the lot, and I think actually this is the second or third owner. They're now responsible for the drainage of the entire neighborhood comes through their property. They've been mowing around it. They've been maintaining it. We've been taking care of the outfall structure only, but it's something we need to look at as these ponds age. Everything needs maintenance. What is the responsibility of that homeowner? That it's not just we've got many private ponds that are just aesthetic. It's somebody's yard. They built it, constructed it themselves. But one of these ones that handles the drainage from the neighborhood the question is, how do we handle that? How is that solely on the homeowner? If they're not taking care of it, then we issue them a violation notice. So I've had some conversations with the town supervisor, briefing her on this, and this isn't the only one, and Mike can share some other, different exchanges. But one of the things that she's tasked is, one, staff to come back with some recommendations, and then work with this committee once we have those recommendations on kind of what thoughts we have, best practices, and how to
Has it,
handle some of those.
what has determined over the years what's private, what's the town takes, what the town has an easement over? Is it administrative changes with the staff, the philosophy, or
It's
cost,
I say
or-
we've punted on some of these that,
Yeah.
if it's solely private and it's Wegmans Pond, then obviously it's
Well,
Wegmans
yeah,
Pond.
I could
If
see the
it's-
commercial,
If it's
but,
private and you have a pond in your lot and it's
Yeah.
your property, that's
Yes.
simple.
Yeah, but
This
these,
one
something like this-
Here, we have an easement over it, which gives us the right to inspect it. If there was an emergency, give us the right to
Mm-hmm.
access and pull something out. Our question comes down to the long-term maintenance of it is,
Yeah.
what's the expectation for, this private homeowner, if it starts to get silted in, if it doesn't function properly and starts to back up and impacts the other residents within the neighborhood,
Mm-hmm.
How best do we handle that? And
yeah.
and Mike can pull up some other ones. We've got another pond in Graceland Estates that is in the middle of.
Yeah,
We've got 15 homes around a pond. It's wholly private.
and the lot lines go into
The lot
the
lines
middle.
go into the
right?
middle of it. So who of those neighbors is responsible for the pond?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's got to share. They do a nice job of maintaining it, so I don't think it's an aesthetic thing. They've maintained the pond themselves. But if there ever is an issue, it needs to be dredged, it doesn't function, it starts to back up the drainage in the neighborhood, which neighbor do we send the
Yeah,
violation notice
so-
to?
Yeah, I guess
And they all
you're
go,
right.
well,
And
it's
then
not
and
mine.
they're like, no, not me.
I guess the question is like,
I don't have the outfall structure. Well,
Right.
Bob's got the pipe coming in, Donna's got.
so
we've
what's the
got some-
difference between, say, this one at Graceland and Glenbrook? Why did the town not decide to take,
And we've run the gamut on that, because initially we started taking pond ownership, and Mike can pull up Glenbrook. Initially, we started taking pond ownership. Obviously, there's a cost to that. So every pond the town takes on, that's more cost for the town, for us to maintain, for us to take care of. So then we kind of went through a cycle where we should push it to an individual, let them take care of it. It's their pond, it's not the town's responsibility. Okay? Every choice comes at a cost.
Yep.
Then we move to, well, let's make an HOA. So we've got an HOA, we've got the Camden Park neighborhood, which is off of State Road. That's an HOA. The HOA's now gone defunct. They haven't paid taxes. The ponds, there's 2 ponds in there that's now diverted or reverted back to the county. So now the county owns the 2 ponds. So those will likely come back to us. So we've tried a couple of different avenues. We had park districts back in the day. You know, those got a little cumbersome with the park districts. Each one was handled a little bit different. Each person wanted it a little different.
But we do have a townwide
So-
drainage district.
And we've always
Right.
looked at the townwide drainage district to handle streams, regional ponds.
Yes.
You know, so everybody pays into that fund. That's why we look at, overall, if
How much-
drainage helps overall.
How much does the town, what's the budget that comes out of that, Mark, on an annual basis, roughly?
We have approximately 300,000
Yeah.
that is dedicated. So everybody in town
Yeah.
pays
Yeah.
$20 towards the drainage fund, and then that's, why we have this committee. That's why we talk about how and where those funds are spent. The town board's ultimately the one that, allocates those dollars, but we look at this group to
So
do
for,
that. But then,
yeah, for instance, this new development up at Jackson and Plank, how do you plan on
so now.
managing that pond, for
Yep.
instance?
That's a good question. So in the last couple of years, we've created these special improvement districts. So the people that are living within that neighborhood will have an extra line on their taxes just for their pond. If they have a subdivision sign, if they want, anything additional in and around that, you move into, that's the Rocco Pines development. You move into the Rocco Pines development, we'll have a line item on there. And, it'll cost you an additional amount for us as the town, so it'll be on town property, but you and
So-
your neighbors are the one who are benefiting from it, so.
So
you
that's
pay for it.
similar to Victor, they call it a DIA, Drainage Improvement Area. So do we double dip on these guys?
I mean, in the drainage fund, you're paying $20 towards the drainage fund. And we always look at, that pays for the general maintenance of the streams, the creeks, and everything else. So everybody is benefiting by having good drainage over.
No, I
town.
agree, I agree.
Having an individual pond within your development, now we're trying to put those in this special
The
improvement
the
districts.
beneficiaries of that particular pond.
You're benefiting from it, your neighbors are benefiting from it,
But
you're into.
Commission ditch, we're looking at, that is a benefit to the entire community, more or less.
Yep.
Okay.
And
No, that
so-
makes sense.
So that's where we look at and focus the dollars is, those overall projects. Road, culvert infrastructure, we did get some grant funding for Courtshire, but Glenbrook, we had to replace that culvert. That comes out of that general fund. So we look at
Sure.
if we spread that around town, spread that, across the community, walk all the streams, walk all the ways, then if we take care of the overall drainage area, that benefits everybody. But if it's specific to just your neighborhood, and that's been recent, Mike's bringing up, this is Helmford Estates. So off of Dublin Road, we've got 2 ponds that kind of serve the neighborhood. There's one on this part that's wholly on a private property, and then one on the south end, again, that is wholly on one property, but, collects drainage from the neighborhood. So those are some of the ones that we've kind of look at. Again, aesthetics, we don't typically do aesthetics. We don't do fountains. We don't do
Sure.
some of that other stuff. If the neighbor on that property wanted to put a fountain in it, it's on their property, it's their thing. If that isn't maintained and it starts to back up, then how and where did the town get involved? Obviously, we'll have to get council involved, code enforcement. But over these next summer months, and we've got a list of them, we'll as staff kind of start to come up with some thoughts, ideas, suggestions, and then come back to this group,
Yeah.
probably likely at our September meeting, since the June one will be on
On
the
the-
road. In
on-
September,
yeah.
come back and say, okay, here's some initial thoughts. What's the committee's thoughts? And then at least if these neighbors come back and our determination may be it's on private property, it's wholly your responsibility, and we'll just issue a letter saying, take care of it, but at least it's been vetted through this committee, and then obviously through council, and then ultimately the town board would, sign off on
So
any decision.
what's that large pond there, Mike? Is that Skimore?
Yes.
Okay,
So that one.
yeah,
Call it an aesthetic pond,
Yeah.
but that one isn't there for stormwater
Right.
treatment purposes. That was just
recreational.
recreational, so we don't have to take jurisdiction over it.
Yep,
It doesn't have to meet water quality requirements, so that's kind of where we get caught in is the ponds that are required as part of water quality under their development quantity, to reduce downstream impacts. you know, obviously if they're not maintained, then how does that, you know, impact the surrounding neighborhoods, the downstream neighbors? So that's some of the stuff that, you know, we've got a list of.
Right, and it's all based off of the EPA, which then the DEC regulates the town. The MS4 is making sure that all these stormwater facilities that are managing runoff from, you know, developed sites, that they meet, you know, the requirements and are kept up to, you know, the standards that they were designed to. So this is where most of these things start coming out of the fact of these private owners now need to pay a engineer to have an engineer inspection done so that we can verify that it's still designed, or it's still functioning as designed, so.
Okay.
I mean,
Mark,
yes, Ed.
do you know if the private ponds, the deeds for those private ponds, are there any clauses in the deed so the owner's aware of that he has to maintain it?
That's a good question. We've had, you know, kind of different people have different takes in the past. I don't know if any of the deeds really express that. We just kind of sent them a letter saying, hey, it's time for your, we'll say annual inspection. It's every 3 years, but, you know, it's time for the inspection. And then, you know, we've gotten, you know, pushback from certain people going, well, that drains the whole neighborhood. It's not just my problem. You know, what's the town going to do to help us? And, you know, at this point, it's been private. Some of them have been good about doing the reports and doing the inspections. Others have not. We've had to follow up with code enforcement. Getting the assessment is the first piece, but then if it doesn't require maintenance, you know, how does that shake out? And again, maybe the determination it's wholly on private property, and buyer beware, you bought it, it was on your lot. You know, you should have done your homework and taken a look at it.
Yeah, I just think moving forward, that either the drainage improvement per subdivision,
Yep.
because, you know, the typical home buyer that buys a lot, got a great pond, but then he isn't, you know, he isn't aware that these things occur, and I think the town should take some, you know, responsibility. And I know, like you said, we've gone back and forth over the past 45-plus years, but I just think moving forward that we take the onus off of one single owner. That's just my opinion.
And that's the tact we've
Yeah.
taken, at least in the last 5 or 10 years, is to the town owns it, and then we'll create the district over it. So
Yeah.
when Bob's living there, Bob benefits from the drainage.
Yeah.
You know, whether he can see the pond or not. Again, these are not, we're not
Sure.
looking at these as being waterfront property, and sometimes we have realtors that sell them as
Yeah.
waterfront property.
Right.
They charge a premium for it, and then the person calls us and goes, well, my beach area doesn't look
Yeah.
perfect, and they're meant to be a stormwater treatment. They're
No,
meant to be a, you know,
that's-
people call and say, well, my pond has frogs and fish and birds, and there's all sorts, go, well, it sounds like the pond's functioning perfectly. It's supposed to be a natural habitat. It's supposed to, you know, that's what we're trying to mimic is
Sure.
nature after development goes in to help collect all the fertilizers from, you know, everybody fertilizes their lawn, it rains, it washes off, the ponds turn green. You know, that's unfortunate, but that's the intent, is they take the hit before it goes to the stream, or, you know, we don't have beach closures, or, you know, hits the Genesee River or out to
Sure.
Runnequay Bay. Is that it's meant to have the treatment local and to help with that. So, yeah, we've kind of got some gap ones. Thankfully, we did get clarification during our audit from the DEC that ponds pre-2008 that changed to Phase 2 aren't required to get the reports done, so that helps us with some of them. Some of them we've been sending letters for years, and theirs kind of predates that line in the sand of that 2008 timeframe, so pre that. They don't have to get the inspection done,
Sure.
which is great, but obviously they still, you know, need to perform, they still need to function as ponds, whether for quantity, so they're not impacting, you know, flooding on the neighbors, or quality to keep the fertilizers and other stuff down, so.
Mark, I've got two sort of questions. One is that whenever you buy a home, there has to be a disclosure statement signed by the prior owner, and you know your real estate agent, of course, goes over that with you to make sure that you let them know there's whatever, something, you know, mold in the basement, or there's
Sure.
a little, you know, the property doesn't quite end where it appears to end, or whatever it happens to be. Is there no requirement on real estate disclosure forms for something like this saying, hey, the pond's on your land, you're responsible for taking care of it. I mean, it seems to me that that would be one way, just basically requiring disclosure on real estate forms.
Yeah.
That if we could, through the town, speak to the town attorney about how can we make sure that for property sold in Penfield, this is part of the disclosure form, even if it's some little, a tiny addendum.
Yeah. Yeah,
Because
that's
I
something we
agree
can-
that it's kind of probably a shock to most people to find out, like, I'm in charge of taking care of this pond.
Or the pond looks nice the day you move in,
Right.
and it recently was maintained, cleaned, or the subdivision was recently built. It looks beautiful, it looks
Yeah.
great. Hey, we got
Yeah.
waterfront property, and over time.
Yeah,
it
so
kinda
I would
degrades.
say that, because that would also then apply if it were a shared maintenance fee within the development, that it would be on their disclosure forms too, saying,
Yep.
you can't see the pond from your house, but because you benefit from it, you're going to have to chip in or whatever. And I guess the second thought or question would be, with respect to ponds that are constructed in a development where all the housing is the same developer, it's all done, even if it's phased, it's all done by one developer more or less as a whole thing. Can the developer be required to put some funds, say, in escrow for some level of maintenance going out at least a certain period of time for that pond? Or especially if there is almost like an insurance policy, a big hit to something with that pond. Would that be another way to sort of mitigate some of this stuff, to have the developers escrow money for a certain period of time to help with these expenses?
That's something we can definitely investigate, and something we'd have to talk to the town attorney on,
Yeah.
is whether that needs to be. We definitely make sure and inspect the pond is built to spec, and they have to give us as-built of it to make sure. We obviously review the design, review the calculations that come in, and then we obviously then do inspections at the time it's built to make sure it's done properly, constructed properly. But as far as in escrow, I know we take a 2-year bond on roads. Utilities we take ownership of, so at the end of a project, we do inspections, and then the builder, takes a 2-year bond out on storm, sanitary, as well as the road. So if there is an issue in those first 2 years, I've not heard of it for a stormwater pond, but maybe that's something that we can look into, and something to at least have
Yes.
some surety for at least the short term going forward, and then.
Yeah, and I think it will, if nothing else, encourage them to do a really great job on building these ponds.
Oh, good. Good thoughts. So more to follow on that one. And I didn't mean to pick on anybody tonight on screen of these, and not saying we have problems with these spots, but just kind of showing some of the cross-section of some of the different things we've got. We've got ponds on multiple parcels. We've got ponds on individual parcels. We've got easements over some, so we've got the rights to go in there. We always debate the responsibilities, whether that means we've got the responsibility to do the maintenance on that or not. Anything else on, I think that's all I had for the Penfield information. The Monroe County Stormwater Coalition, I think I shared at the last meeting, we, as a coalition across Monroe County, have been providing comments, responses to the DEC's proposed or new permit that's they've put out. So that falls under, for us, there's 2 different permits: the MS4 permit, which encompasses all the towns and communities, and then there's a construction permit. The construction permit came out a couple of years ago, 2020 I think was the last construction permit, and now they're pushing out the MS4 permit, so we've provided comments back on that. I think that just went to the end of last month, or just maybe
End
even
of last month, yeah.
end of last month. Went back to the DEC, so we'll see what they come back with, or what additional feedback they have. I don't have any updates from the state or the EPA. Any old business to discuss? Any new business from the committee for discussion tonight?
I've got a question.
Sure.
When you guys were talking about cleaning up some of the streams and so forth, and basically picking debris out, nothing, not digging, not disturbing soil, Would that be something where groups of citizens, whether it's Boy Scouts, whether it's Penfield, Color Penfield Green, whatever, where groups of citizens could help participate in that, supervised by somebody from the town, or somebody else empowered by the town who knows what they're doing, to have a day where they do that type of work, maybe a couple of days a year, maybe once in the spring and then once again in the fall.
We'd have to take a look at that, because I just picked Commission Ditch out. Commission Ditch is wholly owned and on private property. So we'd have to look at what, if any, liability there is. Now you've got other private individuals on private property. So if it's a town park, we do cleanup days, and we have, different events, and I think you could work there. I'd have to, again, talk
I'd be really worried about the
Council.
liability of someone falling into the water.
I'd just say it's not,
And plus the size of the trees that were taken down. These things are, 10,
I mean,
usually the small ones are 10-inch diameter, and they go on up to 24, 26-inch diameter trees. They're not small stuff that, the Boy Scouts are going to be able to do.
So I think
you got chainsaws and
on town properties, there may be opportunities if we're cleaning up brush or doing stuff,
Right.
or if the parks guys are trimming things, and then have the Boy Scouts, carry off small brush or clean up stuff. I would just have a little concern on private property. The homeowners have authorized the town to come onto their property, have signed releases for that. Obviously, we've got our own liability insurance if something
I'd
happened.
worried about the chainsaws, and I said we have to have heavy equipment out there, and I wouldn't feel comfortable with that.
But
Well, if there are
town
projects.
properties or in parks
Yeah.
and stuff like that, I think as we're doing cleanup, we've had obviously Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts construct bridges before and do other, things in the parks or do benches and whatnot. So we're always open to partner with the community and have.
Yeah, I think there are always these
Community
community
events.
groups looking to, to be engaged. And I'm thinking like
Sure.
with Earth Day coming, I know there are a lot of questions like that that'll be coming up with groups. So,
Yeah.
to maybe keep a list along with maybe the Conservation Board and the Trails Committee or something, jointly keep a list of little, small things where groups of, groups of people, kind of the way that many of us do beach cleanups, at Durand Eastman Beach or something once a year.
I think that
kind of
also
thing.
ties in with, they've got the Good Neighbor Day coming up in May, that, if people are looking to volunteer, that's a great day to volunteer and work. The Recreation Department, coordinates that one, but they have individuals that need some help around their yard of raking up leaves or cleaning up, some stuff around their property, and then have volunteers come out and help, at that time. Okay, anything else? No? Okay. Anything else from the committee tonight, staff, for discussion? No? Okay. So our next meeting will be June 11th. So if anybody has any additional locations, spots, they want to take a look at, we can. But we'll plan on doing our normal bus tour around and touring the different sites. So with nothing further for discussion.
Mark, June 11th is going to be what, 8 o'clock at the community center, 9 o'clock?
Yep, typically we do 8 o'clock, meet right at the community center. We'll depart from there and then drive around town and go take a look at what spots we've got.
Thank you.
Sure. So without any further discussion, we'll close the April 5th meeting at 4:50 PM. Thanks to staff, thanks to the committee members, and thank you to PCTV.